So welcome to Laying Out Geometry. In this video we are going to take a brief intro of BSP versus static meshes for level building. We will reinforce the use of Q, W and E keys to switch between translate, rotate and scale modes. We'll make good use of the grid snapping tool and something called the quad view, or something I call a quad view, which gives you a perspective view plus top, front and side view. We're also going to alt drag using the translate tool to duplicate objects. We're going to hold down L and double click to make a temporary work light at the end. This is fiddly, so if it causes you issues, try letting go of L and trying again. I'm leaving it in the fiddly bit because it is fiddly and you're probably going to come across that issue, so it's just honest. By the end of the video, we're going to be in a situation something like this, where we have an enclosed room. We have a work light sitting here just to fill in the shadow. I've just bunged the chair against the wall, and we have all these wall panels that are all kind of tessellating together. And we are kind of stuck in a room, which is the idea of the game. So see you in there. So let's start actually building a level now. We know that we can do basic control over this, but this looks a bit rubbish just having a door standing here. So let's start fleshing out a level. So we're going to start by just getting the structure of the level, and then in a future video we'll talk about putting materials, beautiful materials, down on these floor panels. Now, there are two basic ways of laying out a level. One is with something called static meshes, which are pretty much what they sound like. These doors and chairs are all static meshes. They're meshes in that they are just a series of what we call vertices. You can see that, by the way, by clicking on, say, the door, right-clicking, and you can say Edit SM Door. And if you bring it up, this new editor window that will come up, you'll have a whole new window come up over the top. If you click wireframe, you can see all of the triangles that comprise this actual model. And you can even look at all the vertices, which are the points where all the triangles meet. All right, so that's what we mean by a mesh, and static just means it's non-skeletal. There is another way of building levels, by the way. In the modes panel, so you go window and modes, there's something called BSP, binary space partitioning, which is a technical name for how the geometry is actually stored so that the computer can work out what is in the way of what, etc. Now, the thing about BSP is you can actually flesh out levels with BSP. We're not going to yet in this instance. It has some advantages, which is, for example, in Unreal here, we can actually do vertex or face editing. I can grab a face of something in BSP and move it, and I can even slew it along like this. So it can be more flexible for very simple geometry. The disadvantage is it's not as performant. It does not run as fast as using custom static meshes made by an artist. BSP is a bit of an anachronism. It's an old way of doing things. All right, so we will look at BSP probably later in the course, but for now I'm going to get rid of this box brush thing here. And if you see it's of type brush, that's the indication that this is a piece of BSP. Not going to do it that way. What we're going to do is go to the content browser. And there's two tabs of the starter content, or folders in the starter content I want you to look at. One is the architecture one, which will have floor panels like this 400 by 400 floor panel here. If we brought another one of those into the game, you would see it's a little bit smaller than the standard floor panel, but in fact it's about half the size. And you've got other sized floor panels, but you've also got wall panels. All right? So to get rid of that, I've just hit the delete key on the keyboard. So what I'm going to do is just show you briefly how to start laying out wall panels, putting a door in it, etc. And then I'm going to challenge you to build yourself at least one room of geometry. You're welcome to go ahead and build 2 or 3 if you wish. So here's the idea. We grab ourselves a wall panel. So for instance, 400 is the height, 300 is the width. That would be perhaps a good start. If you want to rotate it, of course, it's the E key, E to rotate mode, and then rotate like that by grabbing the blue bit, then W. So I've got my fingers on QWE, as in QWERTY. And I can then choose the different tools. So E lets me translate. Now, how do we get this exactly at the edge of the map? Well, if it's not already on the floor, the end key will bring it down to the floor. And then you can move left and right. Now, here's a good tip for you. As you move this thing, if you hold down the Shift key, what happens? The camera goes with it. So if we're trying to align this edge, we can come around here where we could make the judgment, hold down the Shift key, select the red arrow through the geometry, and then a line like this. Now, we want to get this precise. So pick a grid snapping of 5 or 10 centimeters. You may find that 10 doesn't align. See, I'm off grid here at 10. So if I go back down to 5 and move it one place, that's exactly right. If I went back to 10, you'd notice that I'm back on the 10 grid, if that makes sense. So have a play with your grid spacing here, and with either holding down Shift or not holding down Shift, depending on whether you want the camera to move with you. All right, so that would be putting a wall panel in. Then how do we get the door in? Well, we've already actually got a door and a door frame here. We could select the 2 of them by selecting one, holding Shift and selecting the other, And now we can just move the door into the frame. I'm going to use the end key above the floor to put it on the floor. And then I'm just going to put this frame snugly in here. Now, there's another view I want to show you before I slide this frame in, which is if we click at the very top right of your 3D viewport, it says maximizes or restores this viewport. Look what happens. I'm going to get rid of the output log. We go to a 4-way view, and each of these can be dragged around with a right mouse button and zoom in and out. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the door from above. So look how easy it is to see that that door's definitely in the right place in both the side view and the top view. You see that? The front view and the top view specifically. Cool, so our door is now in there. I'm going to re-maximize with the top right of the perspective view and just click play and prove that obviously that code continues running. Fine, so now it's a relatively simple question of selecting these objects and putting them where we want. So if I want my door on the end here, I do that, and then if I want another wall panel, I'm going to go for a what? Well, it was a 400 by 300 before. Let's try the same thing again. Okay, and then it's a question of moving it into place. Now you can get yourself above. There's lots of little ways we can make this easier for ourselves, lots of tools and extra keyboard shortcuts and all sorts of other things. But for now, I just want to get this, you in with a basic idea. There we go. Now we've got a really ugly seam here between the two of these guys and around the door. But you'll probably find that when you go to build and build lighting only, that when it does a quick lighting build, that those problems will disappear. And there you go. So that's just a lighting preview issue. All right, so I've got a couple of wall panels in there. What would I do if I wanted thinner wall panels? Well, you can actually duplicate, say, this wall panel. I'm going to move this chair out the way so we can see what we're doing. I can duplicate this wall panel simply by clicking on it, holding down the Alt key, ALT, which is to the left of your spacebar, to the left of CMD on the Mac, and then, of course, immediately to the left of the spacebar on a PC. If you hold down Alt while you drag, look what happens. It creates a duplicate. That's pretty cool. Okay, I can position that, and of course I can then use the R tool key for scale to go into the scale tool, and I can then scale this down. And if it's not scaling how I want it, then I can change the scale snap factor. But I've found that by putting two 400 by 300 wall panels and then putting a third wall panel, 400 by 300 wall panel in, that I can actually scale it to 0.25 and it precisely fits. Again, I'll have this lighting preview issue, but that'd go when I rebuilt the lighting. Can you see now how it's relatively easy to build up an entire level here? I could take this guy, I could get it into translate mode, just find the key, W. I could hold down I could hold down Alt to create an alternative version of that or something. I don't know how you want to remember it. And then I can spin it round 90 degrees looking for that 90. I can come and just double check that this is correct in here. I think it is in this case. Good. And now I can start taking a bigger wall panel and duplicating that. Or, to be honest, sometimes easier just to drop a new panel in. Just do whatever's easiest. And again, you might want to go back to this top view here, scroll it with the right mouse button. And I think you're starting to get the idea, right, of how we place these things. By the way, remember that we can move something just in the ground plane by selecting in this square here. You see where I'm selected, the little right angle, at any point, just moves in the two axes that comprise the right angle. So that's a useful axis locking tip. Okay, so we've got one little gap to close up there, and it should all be fine. So that is the outline of my room. I'm just going to go ahead and put a couple more things in, just to, remember it's Alt if you want to duplicate, just to finish off here. And then I'll close my room up. I may leave the roof open just to keep it bright for now. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and look at materials. Now look, we have a slight issue here that the wall is overhanging, and that is because of the way that this is butting together here. So we're going to worry about that. I think that it is important that we get this right once we have more than one room. Okay, but that's a finer tool. I just want you getting used to the gross manipulations here for now. So what I want you to do is just finish off your room or your series of rooms. You can always put another floor panel or series of floor panels down. And then once you've done that, maximize it up, grab yourself a screen capture tool and share your creation in the discussions, probably after you've rebuilt the lighting. Okay, welcome back. So I am just going to quickly make myself the rest of this room. I'm going to pull this guy over here into rotate with the E key. Wish they'd have made it R. I guess we could remap them if we really wanted. And then let's just go probably from the top view because I think it's much easier to lay walls in a top view. That looks like it's right, looks like it's wall. Right click. Looks Looks like it's 1 unit off. There you go, boom. And even from the top view, I can do this business of holding down Alt, dragging, and you see how I get myself another panel. Now, eventually what's going to happen is we're going to make a real mess of our hierarchy, or what we call the world outliner here. And at some point, we're going to make a folder, and we can do that right now by right-clicking in the World Outliner tab and saying Create Folder, and we can call it Walls. I'm going to delete the other extraneous folder. And then you can take everything that's called a wall if you wish, including the wall with the door frame, and just pop it in a Walls folder like that. Put the Walls folder wherever you like. It's going to float to the top because it's a folder, and then that's just a lot tidier, isn't it? All the walls can be collapsed down, and the thing doesn't look so ugly. Cool, so let's just finish off. We already have that half panel, don't we, over here? So I can Alt drag, oops, no, that was shift dragging, you've got to look where your fingers are, Alt drag that panel into the right place. It's roughly in the right place there. And you get pretty quick at this when you start using it a lot, and you start getting used to where you need to be snapping, etc. So that ugliness is normal. What you just want to make sure is the gap is closed. Now we've got a double problem on the edge here, compounded by, it's very similar to the problem on the other side. Is it twice as big or about the same size? It's twice as big. But we're going to live with those for now. We just want the interior of the room to look good. And as I say, later we will do the good thing of making sure that the exterior dimensions are right as well. In BSP, you could just adjust the face. But for now, we're going to just block it out using these static meshes to see what the pros and cons of them are. As I say, the main pro long term is that they're more performant. They are faster to render than the other guys. Okay, so nearly there. What I'm doing, because I can't see my keyboard with my mic in the way, is I just keep hitting Shift instead of Alt. So it's Alt that you want to do your duplication. And then we want a final thing, which I think I'm going to grab from here. Duplicate it across, and hopefully you've got the idea. It's relatively simple to lay these levels out. They've done this on purpose, of course. They've given us really useful tools. Where I've got lost. Where am I? There I am. Perfect. Bring it in, and then I'm going to make them butt up against each other perfectly that way, but let them overlap on the outside. Now if I just go ahead and rebuild my lighting, then these ugly lighting preview issues will go away. Also going to show you another thing, which is we could do with some lighting in this scene. If you want to work light in the scene to be getting on with, then I'll show you how to do that. But before I do that, I'm going to show you how to find yourself. You get lost again. I've clicked away, done things too fast, and ended up miles away. How do I end up back in the middle? Well, one way is you double-click on Player Start, and that will get you very close to the start. Then you can use your normal WSAD keys to get yourself back. All right, if you want to work light, then there's a way of doing that. What you can do to get a work light is you hold down the L key and double-click. It's a little bit fiddly, as you saw there. It's not 100% perfect, but let me just show you that again. It brings in what we call a point light into the scene. You hold down the L key and you double-click. If it doesn't work, you try again. Maybe you need to let go of L and try again. And eventually, you will get that work light in place.
Hi there, this is Sam again. This is just a quick post edit to point out that if you're struggling with this particular keyboard combination, the L and double click, another way is to do a Shift L and just a single click, and that seems to be more reliable in this instance.
And then the work light will come in, as I say, as a point light, and you can just move it to where you want, just so you can see what you're doing when you're level building. It's literally like you're under scaffolding. And that's filled in those shadows there. I think the chair would look better if it was up against a wall, perhaps. And then that's it, we're done. I would do a final lighting rebuild, and then I would take a screenshot and share it in the discussions. Now, I want to make sure that you are making your commits to your version control. So I am going to leave Visual Studio because I want all the lock files to be closed. I want to go to File and save all inside Unreal. Close that. And then over here in my version control, the changes are basically there's a Visual Studio file just because I opened and closed it. We can actually ignore .suos. We'll do that very shortly, I think. And then you also have here a .umap, which is the actual map that we changed. So this is where I'll be making my commit, stage all of those, commit, and off we go. Cool. So well done. You've started to build a level, and I will see you in the next video.